Okay, so everyone, today I would like to explain chapter 16 entitled Teaching Pronunciation from the Practice of English Language Teaching, book by Jeremy Harmer. So let's get started. What is good pronunciation? For some people, good pronunciation means being able to speak exactly like a native speaker, and there are indeed some students who aspire to this. There's nothing wrong with such as an aspiration, of course, but it does raise a number of issues. Most course books in use around the world take GA or SSE as their main model, and most course books audio material use these varieties. However, the greatest influence on the students on pronunciation is most likely to come from their teacher, whose pronunciation might not match these varieties. Most important thing about the way we speak English is that we should be intelligible. That is, that we should be understood by other speakers of English, whoever they are. If intelligibility is the goal, then it suggests that some pronunciation features are more important than others. Do our students want their English for? If they want to sound like native speakers, they need to be accurate in the use of all the pronunciation feature of a native speaker English variety. If they are learning English in order to communicate mostly with native speakers, their teacher may need to prioritize almost all native speaker pronunciation features so that they do not sound too foreign and therefore feel uncomfortable. And then pronunciation problems. Two particular problems occur in much pronunciation, teaching, and learning. What students can hear? Some students have great difficulty hearing a pronunciation feature which we want them to reproduce. This may be because their mother tongues do not use sounds which English does. And then what students can sing. Learning a foreign language often presents us with a problem of physical unfamiliarity. And then the intonation problem. For many teachers, the most problematic area of pronunciation is intonation. Some of us find it extremely difficult to hear tones or to identify the different patterns of rising and falling tones. In such situation, it would be foolish to try to teach them. And then phonemic symbols to use or not to use. Since English is for many students apparently be developed by a lack of sound and spelling correspondence, it may make sense for them to be aware of the different phonemes. And the clearest way of promoting this awareness is to introduce the symbol for them. There are other reasons for using phonemic symbols. Paper dictionaries usually give the pronunciation of head words in phonemic symbols. If students can read such symbols, they can know how the word is said even without having to hear it. Of course, digital dictionaries usually have audio recordings to demonstrate pronunciation. However, despite the increasing popularity of this, paper dictionaries are still used extensively around the world. Moreover, it is not always appropriate to play digital audio tracks. When mistakes occur and both teacher and the student know the symbols, it is easier to explain what the mistake is and why it has happened. We can also use the symbols for pronunciation tasks and games. Some teachers complain that learning symbols places an unnecessary burden on the students. For certain students, this may be true, and the level of strain is greatly increased if they are asked to write in phonemic script. But if they are only asked to recognize rather than produce the different symbols, then the strain is not so great. And then when to teach pronunciation. Just as with an aspect of a language like grammar, vocabulary, and etc., teachers have to decide when to include pronunciation teaching in a lesson sequence. The whole lessons. Some teachers devote whole lesson sequence to pronunciation, and some schools timetable pronunciation lesson at various stages during the week. And then discrete slots. Some teachers insert short spirited a separate pronunciation slot into lesson sequence. Over a period of weeks, they work on specific phonemes, either separately or in contrasting pairs. And then integrated phases. Many teachers get their students to focus on pronunciation issues as an integral part of a lesson. When our students listen to a recording, for example, one of the things which we can do is to draw their attention to pronunciation feature on that recording. And then opportunistic teaching. Just as teachers may stray from their original plan when lesson realities make this an inevitable and may teach vocabulary or grammar opportunistically because it has come up. So there are good reasons why we may want to stop what we are doing and spend a minute or two on some pronunciation issue that has arisen in the course of an activity. And then pronunciation and individual study. Okay, student. Okay, so pronunciation is an extremely personal matter, and even in monolingual classes, different students have different problems, different needs, and different attitudes to the subject. In multilingual classes, of course, students from diverse language backgrounds may have very specific concerns and issues to deal with. One way of responding to the situation, especially when we are working with phonics, is to get the students to identify their own individual pronunciation difficulties rather than telling them as a class what they need to work on. Just as with desert island words, we are telling the students that they should take charge of their own learning and think of their own personal learning needs. We can then help them with the difficult words, especially if we encourage them to identify and bring difficult words to the lesson. It is vitally important when correcting students to make sure that we offer help in a constructive and useful way. This may involve us showing the students which part of the mouth they need to use. And then, okay, next, pronunciation sequence. We often ask our students to focus on one particular sound. This allows us to demonstrate how it is made and show how it can be spelled. There are many other ways of teaching and practicing different sounds, as the following examples show. And one way of having our students pay special attention to sound is to use minimal pairs, that is, two words which are different in only one sound. For example, ship and chip, and then path and both, and etc. And then stress is important if individual words in phrases and in sentences. By shifting it around in a phrase or a sentence, we can also change emphasis or meaning. Young learners are very good at imitating, especially their teachers, and we can help them hear and think about the way words are pronounced by involving them in games and actions. Young learners are very good at imitating, especially the teacher again, and we can help them. Okay, so for example, tell students that they are going to make words by standing and sitting. They have to think of how many parts the words has and then make words stages. And then working with intonation and stress. We need to draw our students' attention to the way we use changes in pitch to convey meaning, to reflect the thematic structure of what we are saying and to convey mood. For some students and teachers, the technical aspect of intonation seems confusing. However, recognizing how a person feels through the sound of their speech is somewhat easier. And then sound and spelling. Although there are many regularities in English speaking and English spelling, the fact that there is no one-to-one correspondence between letters and phonemes causes many problems for some learners. One way of getting students to focus on the correspondence between sounds and spelling is to ask them to listen carefully to what they read using their inner ear, or activating what Andrea Underhill calls the inner word bands. And then connected speech and fluency. Good pronunciation does not just mean saying individual words or individual sounds correctly. The sounds of words change when they come into contact with each other. This is something we need to draw our students' attention to in our pronunciation teaching so that at the very least they can recognize what they hear when listening to naturally flowing speech. We can adopt a three-stage procedure for teaching students about features such as elision and assimilation. And then in the first stage, it's comparing. Start by showing the student sentences and phrases and have them pronounce the words correctly in isolation. And then second stage, identifying. Have the students listen to recordings of a connected speech and ask them to produce a full written grammatical equivalent of what they hear. And then in stage three, production, whenever modeling and teaching phrases and sentences give the students a connected version, including contractions where necessary, and get them to say the phrases and sentences in this way. Okay, so that's all about the chapter 16. Thank you and see you.